Hey folks, Karl here, and welcome to episode 2 of this guest build for eModels.co.uk of ICM's Ford Model T early.
eModels.co.uk. Make something awesome.
Okay folks, so we are now on to the build. We have our instruction manual here. We've got our snips which we're going to be using. We've got some of the Tamiya extra thin cement here as well, ready to go. And of course we've got some other Tamiya glues as well. We've got some of the quick setting, just in case there's something there that we need to set really quickly. And we've got some of the Tamiya white as well. This stuff takes a little bit longer to set, so if there's something we need to jiggle around and move about before we want it to set, we can use that stuff, and it gives us a little bit more time. But for the most part, we are going to be using the Tamiya extra thin. We do have an assortment of sanders ready. So first part is going to be the engine, which is going to be on Sprue B. So we have Sprue B here, and most of the engine parts are down on this front part here. So we are going to start off part 1 right there, and now we're going to need B48 and B39, which of course are these right here. So my cutters aren't anything special, they're just a set from RS. However, they are a fine tip cutters. For those of you who want to see the difference from a normal pair of wire cutters, these are a normal set. I use these for the rougher work, or if I'm cutting up sprues or something like that, and you can see the difference in them. These are a little bit more heavy duty than these ones. These do have quite a nice fine point on them, so you don't need the super expensive ones. These ones will do you. Obviously they are not as good for cutting close to the piece, but it's very rare I cut close to the piece, and if I do struggle to get in with my cutters, I always have a tendency to cut the sprue away at another point, somewhere like here. Now if I cut this, the whole thing is going to come away because it's a one piece, but that's fine. We can put this big sprue out of the way, and we can cut this piece off like so. So we just have that piece. Put this piece to one side, nice and safe, so we don't lose it. And then if you are struggling to get your snips in, you can just start cutting away where you can get to, so it's nice and easy to get to the part. And obviously we're not going to cut too close. We're going to leave that knob on for now. Same on the other side. We will take that knob off in a moment. We'll get rid of that into the bin. And now we're going to cut as close as we can, not too close because we don't want to damage the part. So we're always going to leave a little bit of a nub on there, like so. I don't know whether you can actually see that or not. So there's still a nub there. Again, we'll do the same if you can get hold of it, of course. These are quite small parts. Again, we're going to cut that off. So we have that very, very small nub on there. Might be a bit difficult to see. I can't tell on this small little screen, but we'll see it better once we come into editing. And then of course we're just going to sand that away. So we're going to start off with something quite rough, and we're just going to very gently, you don't need to press, and then just sand it away and let the sander do all the work. You don't need to put too much effort in. You're just rubbing it backwards and forwards and let the sander just take that nub away. Keep on going. Once the nub seems to have gone and you're actually sanding the whole thing, get something a little bit finer, like so, and then just finish it off. Like so. And now that nub has completely gone. Hardly any effort whatsoever. So we're just going to repeat the process. Same again this side. Very, very gently. Absolutely no need to press down on the piece at all. The sander will take it away. Just like so. And now we're rubbing flat against that piece. So we're going to get rid of the rough one. I'm going to go a little bit finer. Just do the same again, just to take that rough edge off. And of course, if you want to go even finer, to get an even smoother surface, you can get something really, really fine and just finish it off, like so. And because we've done this one, we are going to do the other one. Like so. And there we go, there's our first two pieces. Sanded down, all the nubs on it, cleaned away, and that's ready for glue. But first and foremost, we are going to do a quick test fit. I recommend doing this every time you're going to be gluing a piece together. Very gently, make sure it all fits together nice and neatly, like so. Again, they're very small pieces, so they're quite hard to hold on to, so that fits together quite nicely. We will glue this together, and then it's going to want a little bit more sanding once it's glued together. So, get our extra thin, and all we're going to do is we're going to very gently open that up, like so. Yeah, just so we can let the capillary action of this glue get into that seam, like so, and we're just going to push it together. And that will do us for now. We can let that set. Okay, try not to touch the piece once this glue's on before it dries, because you will start to leave fingerprints, and they can get quite hard to get out. It's not impossible to get them out, but it's quite hard. So that piece is now glued. So I'm going to twist it around, and we're going to drop a tiny little bit of extra thin on the other side, and just let the glue find its way into that seam, and then just leave it be. A little bit of pressure on the piece just to make sure that the plastic melts correctly and bonds together, because that's what this stuff does. It melts the plastic rather than glues the plastic together, and as the plastic melts, it just bonds together. So there we go. We are just going to leave that to one side. You can see I've squeezed it together there. We've got a little bead there, so we need to let that dry completely before we do any more sort of sanding on it. Otherwise, because the plastic is soft and sticky, you'll just end up dragging it all over the place. So we're going to leave that alone for a minute, and we're going to cut the next piece off the sprue. So we are looking for parts B27 and B10. So are they on that piece we cut off? Let's have a look. Nope, they're not on that piece, so we're going to need the full sprue again. So B27, which is somewhere on here, I hope. He says, as he can't find it. Well, there's 30, 28, 27. There we are, that small piece right there. So again, we're just going to cut as much off with the sprue as we can. So it's down there, and we're also going to want B10. Oh, B10, where are you? So there's part B10. That's quite a fine little bit. So if I just cut here, there's a good chance it's going to bend. So I am going to cut on the sprue there, just so that when I cut into this piece, it doesn't bend that bit there. And again, I'm just going to cut that off there, let it drop to the table. We'll get rid of that sprue because we don't need it anymore. So I cut it off, so there's plenty of the sprue left on it. Okay, and then you can do the fine cutting once you've got it off the sprue, rather than bending that tiny little piece of plastic and snapping it, which I have done several times. So there we go, that is off. Now this is going to be quite a fine sand. We don't need the rough sander this time, so we're just going to start off with this finer sander, because it's not going to take much to get that off. Like so. Twist it around. And we'll take that knob off there as well. And again, no pressure. Just let the sander do its work, nice and gently. If we look at this piece, there is a seam line all the way around this piece. When you're controlling small pieces like this, a lovely set of tweezers to have are these reverse tweezers. You can take these reverse tweezers, you can open them up, let them close, and it will hold the piece for you. So we can now sand down that flat edge if we want to. I'm going to, because I don't know. I'm a builder rather than a painter, so I do prefer the build process than the painting process. So I'm just going to flip that around and sand this other side. And the more time you take on the build and get rid of all those seam lines and all the rest of that stuff, the easier it is to actually paint. So that is sanded down and ready. We're going to leave that there. Take this next piece. we are just going to cut it off. We've got a small nub there. Now we are going to want the rougher sander on this one. We want a nice clean edge on the sander, because there's a bit of detail there we don't want to take off as well. Just let the sander do all the work, like so. Again, I'm going to get my tweezers because this is quite hard to hold on to. I'm just going to hold it like so. That's it. And I'm just going to work, no, wrong sander. I'm going to work the sander, get this nub off. There we go. I'm not holding the piece, I'm just holding the end of the tweezers. Nice and gently, because there's a little bit that sticks out on here. We don't want to sand that away. There we go. Last little bit with the smoother sander. And there we have it. That piece is ready as well. So that first piece should be dry by now. It is. So we are going to sand this edge here because there is that bead that we put on it. So I'm going to start with our rougher sander. Sand off that edge a little bit more. There we go, and you can see how rough that looks, if the camera will pick it up, of course. And then we just gradually make it smoother and smoother with our other sanders. Just keep going up the grades or down the grades, depending on how you look at it, until we get that back to being nice and smooth. So I'm going to go around the whole piece now to smooth everything off. Just like so. That was awfully high pitched. Down to a finer grade. Is that wobbling the camera? And there we go. That is that piece sanded and ready. Now there is going to be something going on the top of here, so I'm not going to bother trying to fill these gaps in, but there is a little line down there, so we may very well put a little bit of sprue goo on there, fill that in, leave it to dry and let it sand. Now if you don't know what sprue goo is, it is, almost lost a piece there. You can't pick it up, get your tweezers. There we go. So, if you don't know what sprue goo is, basically, when you've almost finished a pot of Tamiya, you will take some old sprues that you've got to one side, like this stuff, cut it up into little chunks, and fill it up. Just drop into your Tamiya pot, and you end up with pretty much some liquid sprue, and you can just spread that on when you've got a seam like that. Leave it to dry for 24 hours because it does take some drying, and then you can sand it down. It literally just fills that seam up, and that has saved me quite a few times where models haven't quite fitted together. So we were very, very well put off camera. I'm not going to do it on camera, we'll do it off camera. We'll put a little bead in there and fill it up. So we are wanting this side, and we are wanting this piece here, and it is going into this like so. It's actually got on the back side. I did choose all the small awkward parts to start off with. There's a little guide on the back of there, and that guide fits into that back end of this engine block on there, like so, and it should just slot in, he says. There we go. It slots on just like so. We're going to hold that in place from this side, and we're going to put a dab of glue onto it from the back. Take our extra thin and just a very, very small dab on the back like that. That's all you need. Apply a little bit of pressure and then just move your finger away, because it does spread out really easily and you'll end up with fingerprints all over that. So we'll leave that to dry. And then this piece just fits on top. There's 2 pins for it to drop onto on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a very small dab of extra thin on that pin and on that pin. Leave it for a few moments. Take our reversible tweezers, pick that piece up, and we are just literally going to push it into place like so. Oh, maybe not. Put a little bit more glue on there because that started to dry out. Little touch, little touch. And then just push the 2 together, like so. And then release our tweezers. There we go. And that is that on there. That's parts 1 and 2 finished. We're looking like this. Now I'm going to leave this to one side to dry properly, because these things are quite clumsy and I do have a tendency to ping and break things off. So remember, just take your time, there's no rush. So we'll put this to one side at the back here, and the next part we're going to want is B37, which is the bottom of the engine. So that part is here. So we're going to cut that off the sprue and we're going to clean it up. Exactly the same as we did before. There's only one sprue gate on there this time, so I'm just going to cut that off. Cut it as close as you dare, and again, just very gently sand it down. Let your sander do all the work. You don't need to do anything at all. That's that with that one. Already off, see? Very gently. Thing is with some of these sanders, because they're spongy, you can have a tendency to start rounding things off if you press too hard, and you don't want that, because then you use more and more sprue glue. So that is that tidied up. So I'm going to leave this to one side for a few moments. So I'm going to stop here for a minute. I'm going to let all that dry, and then we'll be back. Okay folks, so we are back. This is now completely dry, and we did add a little bit of the sprue goo. So I'm just going to zoom you in so you can take a look at what I'm talking about. So you can see on there now there's some sprue goo sitting on top of where that seal was. So it's completely covered it. And this has been drying for over 24 hours now. So I'll zoom you back out. There we go. Zoomed you back out. We are very gently just going to file this off with our roughest sander. So again, very gently, we're just going to start to take it away, just to flatten that back out again. And once we get it down, we should see that seam line has gone. So a little bit more. While you do this, you've got to try your best to keep the sander as flat as you can. So that is looking to me as though it's all down. It's pretty rough because it's our roughest sander. So we'll zoom you right back in again and take a look. So we are now going to go over this with the smoother sanding sticks and try and smooth that off. So, wrong way, it's always the case. So we'll zoom you right back out. We've got very much a little bit finer. So, very gently. Again, let the sander do all the work. There's absolutely no need to press down hard whatsoever. Just very gently sand it away. So I'm happy with that. We are going to get the even finer sander, which is this one. I don't know what the grits are, I can never remember. But you can feel that they get finer and finer. The last little bit, we're just going to buff that out. And that line should be gone. And my big club hands have just taken that part off again, so we're going to need to glue that back on. So I'll zoom you in and I'll show you the end result. So, and is that going to focus for me? So there you go. So there is no longer a seam line down the front of that engine part. So yeah, make yourself some sprue glue. It does come in very, very handy. Now if you have a great big gaping hole, it can be done, but it's not going to help you. You're better off with something like plastic card or something like that to fill that hole, and then use a little bit of sprue glue over the top. So I'm going to need to put this piece back on that's come off. Now it's very important you do put it on the right way, to follow the instructions, because when you put this bottom piece on, like so, it fits on just like that. This little part does actually sit down inside there. If I zoom you in again, doing a lot of zooming in and out today, it sits inside that well. You can see where the pin is, so make sure you put it the thick end down. Yeah, if I get this, pick this up with the tweezers and come into camera shot for you, see there is a thicker end. Focus for me. Let's go down a bit. There we go. There's a thicker end. That thicker end sits down inside that well, so make sure you put the thicker end on the bottom. Just follow the instructions and you can't go wrong. If you're not sure what the instructions said, just read them again. Just keep on reading them until you understand exactly what it is you've got to do. So, get our extra thin back out. Little dab of glue on. Pins. Got another pair of tweezers here that we can just use to place this on. It's just going to go on like so. That's the danger with normal tweezers. They ping off and fly around everywhere. They are much easier to control. So, on you go. He says, as he keeps on dropping it. A little bit more glue because it's just dried out. And we're going back to our grippy ones because I keep on dropping the thing with my silly little fingers. That is the right way around. There we go. And she's back on. So we'll just give that a few moments to dry. And we should get this bottom piece on at the same time. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by it sits inside that well. There we go. If I zoom you in again, you can see that bottom part sits just inside that well there. Okay, so zoom back out. and we'll get a little dab of glue into the seam here on the end, like so. Let the capillary action do the work. It will pull itself around. We'll let that dry a little bit, and then we'll put some on the other side as well. All the time trying your best to keep your fingers away from where you put the glue. There we go. So we'll leave that to dry over here, and we'll get our next pieces ready. So next up, so we've completed parts 1, 2 and 3. We're on to part 4, so after B22, B21, B9 and B40. So we'll start off with B22. I'll sprue back down. B22 is right here, this part. So we'll cut that off. And we want B40, which is down here. B9, which will be up here somewhere. There it is, a very, very small piece. Be careful we don't lose that. And B21 is also quite a small fiddly piece. So all our pieces down. So I'm going to go get these cleaned up off camera. You don't need to see me to do every single little piece. And once these are all cleaned up, we'll come back. This should be dry by then, and we'll get them stuck on. So I'll talk to you in a moment. Okay folks, so that is our parts cleaned up. So some of these are quite small and fiddly, so I am going to zoom you in a bit more once more. So the first part we are going to put in is going to be this very small part here. Now it's quite tiny, and it is just going to sit on this wheel, on the side of this wheel right here. So again, we are just going to put a dab of glue in there, and then we're just going to place the part onto where it needs to go. So get our extra thin, very small dab of glue on there. We are literally just going to pick this piece up and drop it in place, just like so. Very gently move it around with the tweezers, make sure it is in the exact right place. Very gentle with this, because it will be very difficult to make it disappear with it being so very, very small. So there we go, that is that piece on. I hope I did that on camera. So that piece is now on right there. I think I've just moved it with my finger. Nope, nope, it's good. So put that to one side for a moment. So the next piece is we're going to be putting on is the top, and we also have a fan to put on, and this pipe work here to go on as well. So I am going to give that a few moments to dry properly on here, because if I don't, I know I will lose that piece. So I will talk to you all in a moment. Okay folks, so we are back. That part is now as good as dry, and we're going to, first and foremost, we're going to put the top cover on. So the raised part goes towards the front part of the engine here. So the raised part on that, again, drop that on in place, make sure it fits correctly, and then a very small dab of glue in there. Again, let the glue pull itself around the piece. Put another small bit dab in. There we go. Instantly gets pulled in and pushed around. So you can see on there there's quite a big gap. So what we're going to do is we're going to very gently just push this together a little bit. we should hopefully see the plastic start to extrude from itself. Just push, keep a little bit of pressure on there, just let it set. You might have to work it a bit until it starts to dry. Eventually it will start to hold itself. Take a few moments. Go around, check all the other parts. Again, we want it to extrude that side as well. Save us using the sprue goo. We can then just sand that extruded part down once it's dried. I think this side we may very well need to still add a little bit, because there's still quite a hole there. So there we go, that should do us. Again, we'll probably put a little bit on this end as well. So we're going to do that now before we put anything else on there. So get our mixed sprue goo out. We'll clean a whole load of it off the brush. A little bit on the brush there like that, and then we're literally just going to dab it on, and it just fills that gap. Okay, we don't want any on the sides because there is a detail on the sides. We don't want to fill that up. More of that off. And again, we're just going to dab some over that joint just to fill it up. It will shrink as it dries. So again, we're going to need to leave that a good 12 hours to dry off. You can see where it is. And there. So we'll leave that to dry off. We'll come back, sand it down. We'll get these other parts on. We don't want to put these on until after we've sanded these, because this fan section here sits on the front and right over where we're going to need to sand. So there we go. We're going to call this video here, well, this clip here, while we let this dry, and we'll be back shortly.
eModels.co.uk. Make something awesome.
Okay folks, so our sprue goo is dry again. So if we zoom right in, we shall take a look. So you can see we put it on this end, so it's dry. We put it on this end, on screen here. So again, we're just going to sand these down, smooth them off. We need to take our time because this piece I've already lost once, and I was very, very fortunate to find it on the carpet. So the Sprue Monster tried to claim it, but we were lucky enough to find it. So from now on, I need to be very, very careful. So a little bit more. There we go. That's the rough part done. Same on the other side. Need to be as careful on this side. There's nothing to rip off. A bit smoother. There we go. And then we'll go smoother again. Smooth the edges off. And we'll finish off here as well. So, there we are. Looking a lot better. Excuse me while I just bash the camera. Looking a lot better now. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for what we're going to need. So, there we go. That's going to do nicely. So, what is next? We are actually going to just do that. smooth that off a bit more. Focus. There we go. Much better. Same that side. So what is next? Next we are going to put the next two pieces on, which are the fan and some pipe work. And these, the fan is going on the end of this fan belt here. So this is going to be nice and easy. So it's just literally a dab of glue on that pin, which is just there. And we just pick the fan up and we'll literally just place it on, and it should just go on quite nicely like so. There we are, nice and easy. Move it around with the tweezers, get it where we want it. Let's take that around a bit, right about there I think. Make sure it stays nice and flat. We are going to put a very, very small amount of glue on there, just to make sure it does stick. And there we go, that is on there. The next piece is going to be going into these locating pins here. There's a little hole there and a little hole there, and this is just going to slot into those holes. Which way around? So it is going to be the way I haven't got it. So it's going to be going in there, just like that. So what we're going to do is very gently put it in place as close as we can, back a little bit, got a little fiddly bits. Right, oh, look at that. We got it in place and then we caught it and moved it. Just take your time, there's no rush. There, we've got it. And then just get a little bit of glue and let the capillary action do the rest of the work. A little bit more, just like so, and we'll put a little dab on the bottom there as well. And there we have it. That is the next two pieces on. So the engine detail is starting to come out. We're starting to see what the engine is going to look like. Now we are going to be adding some custom made pieces shortly, but next we've got the exhaust pipe work and the air inlet pipe work to do, and that will be the engine finished, apart from the bits we are going to add, but we'll come to that when we get to it. So I am going to leave this be now and let this dry properly, and then we shall be back. So talk to you in a moment. Okay folks, so this is now all dry. You are going to have to be, I'll try that again, you are going to have to be very, very careful. I've already knocked this off twice, just as I've been manipulating it. Okay, I've already cut off the sprue, the last two parts to go on this engine, very, very small parts. We're going to stick these on now, and that for the most part is the engine done. So I'm going to zoom you in. So like I say, we've got these two very small parts here. Okay, one is going on the top. They both look like exhaust or for the water cooling. So one part is going up the top here, and one part is going on the side here, and it goes down and fastens into the front part of the chassis, which is this part here, the radiator. If I show you the picture, which is there, it shows you that this part here actually fastens into the bottom of that radiator. So we are going to put it on, we're going to position it as best as we can, and then we will remanipulate it once it goes into this to put it in the right place. So first and foremost, we are going to put this piece on, and that goes on the top here, like I said. And if I just take a look on this page, the longer part connects here. So this longer part here, this side, connects onto here. So we are going to put a little dab of extra thin right on there, like so. Give it a few moments. We are then you have to excuse if my head gets in the way. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. So, like I say, we are just going to place this on there like so and hold it for a moment. Hopefully it should take a grip like so. And then we're just going to very gently manipulate it with the tweezers into place like so. And there it is in place. And we are going to put another very small dab of super glue to me extra thin underneath there. Let that soak in, and we're going to leave that be for a moment. Okay, just let that dry. Okay, and then we'll get that second piece on here, which is going to be a lot more difficult because it's stuck on just at that point there. Let's get the tweezers so you can see it properly. Stuck on at that point there. There's a very little hole there, and on the end of this there is a little pin. Okay, and it's going to sit a little something like that. Okay, so that looks like it has dried. And this still needs a little bit of sanding on it. It's going to be a lot easier to sand it now that it's in place. I've done the underside sanding. Once this dries completely, we can very gently take that edge off, either with a sanding stick or a scalpel if need be. So again, we are just going to very small amount of extra thin on that part where we're going to connect. And we'll give it a few moments to let the plastic start to melt, and then we're going to place this on. So it goes this way. Need to turn that around a bit. Always goes in the wrong place. Put that down. How we want it in the tweezers. There we go. Like I say, we are very gently going to place this on there. And that is it. That is exactly how we want it. A little bit. Right there. So, see if we can let that dry in the position we want. And there we go. Just like that. Okay, so for the most part, that is the engine done. We're going to leave this be to dry properly. It's over here. However, we are going to add something to this engine. So we are going to add some of this for some wires that go on top of the engine. And this, if you don't know what this is, it's just a little bit of sprue stretched as thinly as we can get it. Okay, and we're going to chop this off into small lengths, and we're going to attach it to the top of this engine and leave it like that, because those wires will of course connect to the front part of this bit in here. So they will bend over from the top of the engine, and we will just super glue them into there just to give that engine a little bit more detail. So I'm going to get ready and I'm going to show you how to stretch some sprue. So we'll be back in a moment. Okay folks, so we're back. We are going to stretch some of this. Now, whenever you get your old sprues, you can see I've already used this piece to stretch some. So save the straight bits for stretching sprue. Okay, all these smaller bits like this, cut them off. Okay, and save these bits for when you need to make some sprue goo, because these will just go inside your Tamiya extra thin that you've got left for making sprue goo. So save these bits. Save these bits. They are going to come in very useful. What else are we going to need? Okay, so we are going to need a little tea light like this. Okay, and something to light it with, obviously. So I do need to say that if you are a younger modeler, okay, and you are trying this for the very first time, okay, get a little bit of adult supervision, all right? Obviously, you are working with naked flames. It is dangerous, okay? I'm talking of dangerous, make sure anything that's flammable that's on your desk is packed away and out of the way, okay? So nothing sets on fire and we don't have any disasters. So this is very easy once you've done it at least once, okay? It becomes very, very easy. You do get a technique. So we're going to light the tea light like so. Okay, you can do it with just the lighter, all right, but it means you've got to hold the lighter while you're doing it, and this thing gets very hot if it's lit for a long time. So you're better off with one of these. And all we're going to do, okay, we'll take a bit of sprue. I'll zoom you in a little bit so you can see 50-50 chance there. So all you're going to do is hold the sprue, not in the flame, probably about an inch, half an inch above the flame, and you're just going to keep on rotating it like so. Just let it warm up nice and slowly. There's no rush here. You rush it, you'll melt the plastic too quickly and you'll make a mess of it. Just keep rolling it over, and at some point you'll start to see it bend on its own. It'll start to go, there you go. This piece is now starting to bend on its own. All right, you see that? It's wobbling. Okay, give it a little bit longer, and then you're literally just going to move away from the flame, grab the other end, and just very gently pull. Keep on pulling until you get that thickness that you want. Okay, I don't know if you can still see that. So that's about the thickness we want, and we can just, you're supposed to hold on to it till it cools down, but I've just dropped it. But thankfully this bit has stayed nice and straight. It's a little bit kinked at the end. All right, and that is it. You just hold it until it dries. Okay, and then you can put it down. Move your light. You can leave that lit. Just move it out of the way. Okay, zoom out a bit. And you can see now we have a very thin wire stretched from that piece of sprue. Very, very easy. You do it 3 or 4 times and you get used to doing it. So we have another very long piece of wire there now. Okay, we can put that to one side. We can do it in a little bit. So we'll just nip that a bit off. And we'll try and see if we can make some a little bit thicker, just so I can show you that you can make it any thickness that you want. So again, take a bit of sprue. Make sure you leave enough at the end so you can grab hold of it without burning yourself. Very gently, about inch, half inch above the flame. Just keep rolling it around until it starts to bend on its own. Nice and easy. Take your time. No rush, it will start to go on its own. Alright? Just wait for it to start to bend. It takes a moment, but it will start to go. Alright, there we go. We are starting to go. Okay. Keep on rolling it. Let it go. Grab the end, and we're going to make this a little bit thicker. So we're not going to stretch it out as far. We'll just hold that there. Wait for it to cool. And there we go. We have a wire that is not a huge amount thicker, just a little bit thicker. If we get that other piece that we've just done, which is, yeah, and we put that next to it. It's not a huge amount thinner, but it is. So if I put that piece, we'll move this out of the way. Get these two pieces together, he says, as he tries to get them together. Can we see that? One bends a lot easier than the other. There we go. The thickness isn't huge, but it all depends on how much you stretch it. So if we just cut that off there, we'll get another piece of sprue because that's getting a little bit short. We'll try it one more time. Keep on rolling, keep on rolling. We're going to go a little bit sooner this. As soon as this starts to bend a tiny little bit, we're going to go for it. So there. All right. So pull, 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 pull. It's a little bit tougher. Okay. This is good for making, what would you know, like a proper thick antenna on top of a tank or something like that. There we go. So you can see the difference in the sprue sizes. So we have a nice thick piece, but obviously it's a lot thinner than what the sprue was. And you might find uses for it. I did this for a Conqueror Mark 1 I made, and it's a little bit thinner than this. And it was for like a thick antenna, small thick antenna on top of the tank. So yeah, you can stretch this to any thickness you want. If you want it a little bit thicker, as soon as it starts to bend, start to stretch it. It all depends on how warm you get the plastic, is how much you can stretch it. So there we go, we're starting to stretch now. So I'm just gonna go a little bit like there. I'm gonna let that cool at that point. So again we've got another different thickness. So if we put these here, you can see quite thick, a little bit thinner, and then we've got some that's really thin. You can't really see that, can you? So I'll put it on my hand, and then so we have the first piece, which is like so, quite thick, and we've warmed it up a little bit more, and we have a piece that's like that. And then of course when we've got it really, really warm, we've got a really, really thin pot. So if you want it thicker, don't warm it up quite as much. I'm going to zoom the camera in so we can see that on the bench a little bit better. We'll get those out of the way. Put our light out because we're not going to be using that for a little while. I'll zoom you in. Always go the wrong way. So there we go. That's a little bit better. You can see that was the first bit we did. There's the full length one that we did. And you can see how thin that one turned out. Okay. And then obviously we did a big thick one there. And we did a little bit thicker. So you can get this stuff as thick or as thin as you want it. Just practice, practice, practice. Just get some sprue and spend half an hour just trying different temperatures, or the amount of time that you warm it up for, and just spread it out at different lengths to see what you can get. Okay, but like I say, any younger modelers out there that have never done this before, all right, just get an adult to supervise you while you're doing it. Okay, so I'm going to tidy my bench up, and then we're going to get some of this thin stuff onto the top of this engine. So see you in a moment. Okay folks, so we have cut up some of that sprue into very small little strips like so, and we are now going to mount these onto the engine. Now I've already mounted one, just a trial to see if it did work before I came here and made a fool of myself, and there we go, we have one wire sticking out. I'm going to zoom that in a bit so we don't get too much of the glare from that light. So you can see there we have one coming out, and obviously this is going to be bent over like so on camera. Yeah, this is going to be bent over like so into the front of the radiator. So we're going to want to put a few more in. So what we've done on the top of the engine, on the detail of this engine, there's some little holes. Come on, focus. Yeah, and what I've done is I've gone and I've taken a very small drill bit, like so, okay, and we've just drilled some small holes in the top of here. Focus. There we go. in where those indentations are, and all we're doing is we're taking one of these that we've pre-cut, these, and we're just dropping it. Oh, disappeared. There it is. We're just dropping it into the hole, if you can get hold of it, of course. I need more hands. Please send spare hands to me. So we are going to take this fibre. I'm just going to thread it into the hole that we've drilled, if it'll go in, of course. Let's try this one. There we go. And just push it into that hole, like so. So now we have two in there. I'm going to put a little bit of to-me extra thin on that, so it melts and it holds itself in place, just like that. So we now have two wires in there, and we're going to do that with all the other holes. Another piece. This hole may need to be made a little bit bigger because that is quite small. So, and I keep going off camera. There we go. Another one in there. Again, a bit of extra thin, just to get that melting, so we can push it into place like so. And we have one more to put in here. Into that last hole, like so. You might find that this just doesn't work at all. I'm hoping that it does, because it will add that extra little bit of detail to the engine that you wouldn't normally get. And of course, the hobby's all about experimenting and finding new ways to do things. So I've never done this before, so we shall see what result we get. Should be interesting. So there we go. We'll let that completely dry. Obviously these are going to be bent over and then they'll get trimmed to fit. So, and we'll probably drill some little holes in the front of the radiator block so we can slot these in. So we'll see how it goes. So that is the engine complete. She'll come out a little bit, and there we go. One engine finished. There's the other side. So that is the first part of the build finished. Okay folks, so that engine is now complete. As you can see, we've bent those wires over in preparation and ready. They are going to be manipulated a little bit more and made a little bit more of a better shape. So what we need to do now is find some way to mount it so we can paint it. So what I've done is those bits of sprue that I've been stretching, okay, I've stretched one out a little bit so it comes to a fine point, flatten the end, and the other side we've taken to a sharper point. And what we're going to do, this is so we can push it into some of this packing material so it holds it in place. So whenever you get a packing material with this sort of stuff in it, save it, because it's good for making holders for all your bits and pieces. And most of the time we do use a proper clamp, something like this, but there's nowhere on here to mount that to, really, not effectively, here on screen, not effectively. Okay, so what we're going to do, like I say, I'll flatten that end off and we're going to glue it to the underside of there. Okay, and then when we finish painting it, we can just break it off, and all that's not painted is a very tiny dot underneath there, which you are never going to see because it's mounted inside the engine bay, like so. So all we need to do is get some of our glue, put a very small dot on the bottom there, and we are literally just going to touch this onto the model and wait for it to start to set. Shouldn't take it too long. Okay, so that took a little bit longer than I expected, but it is stuck there now. It's still not going to be strong enough to mount it into this yet, so I'm just going to wait for that glue to dry a little bit more, just so it's strong enough to support its own weight, like so. That should do it. Now let's see if it falls off. So there we go. So we are now just going to push that into there, and we're going to leave that to dry properly before we start painting. So that is the engine built. Now this video is going to be quite long because we've gone through quite a lot of detail of how I do my build processes, and we've covered some sprue goo, we've covered some stretching of some sprue. So I'm going to call this video here because I'm going to guess it's around about an hour long, and I don't usually do videos this long. I usually try to keep my videos to about half an hour, but because we've gone into so much detail for one piece, that's how long it is. So the next video we are going to be moving on to the rest of the chassis. It's not going to take as long next time because the way I usually show my builds is I will build it off camera. Any problems or any issues I have, I start recording and show you those problems with that specific kit. So next episode won't be as long, I promise. So with that said, I would like to say thank you for watching. Thank you to eModels for having me here, and don't forget eModels.co.uk for all your modelling needs, and we shall see you next time. Ta-ta.
eModels.co.uk. Make something awesome.